Cheers. I'm going solo tonight. We've been spending the last couple of episodes talking about a boat we hope to buy for the Great Loop, the first major voyage of our overall plan. And before we get to the boat we bought, we thought it would be a good idea to spend a little time on negotiations for a new boat and the process that one must go through to get the best deal as part of every boat buying transaction. So here we go. So let's get started with the beginning. At the beginning of each negotiation where you're starting to get into a contract on a new boat, it's important that you don't come in rushed. And you don't leave rushed either. You have to think about it in terms of it's a process. We're going to hit every step. And at the end of the day, if you do not like the price or the boat, you pretty much have the ability right up until the end to back out. So don't feel pressured and rushed. That is how you lose money in a deal. So before you get to the sold step, we have to go through a couple of other precursor steps, and that's what we're going to cover today. All right, so what are the first negotiation techniques to consider? Now, these are our techniques. These are not all encompassing, all comprehensive, but we wanted to talk a little bit about what we do in the context of boat buying. The first is understand the profile of your seller. So, are they a family? Are they a wealthy couple? Are they a retiree? Is it a person who's doing the loop? It's important to understand the profile of your seller because who they are is important to understand what their motivations are. And once you understand what their primary motivations are in the sell transaction, you have a leg up on negotiating either aggressively or conservatively. Understand why they are selling. So an additional piece of information, why they're selling is also important. For instance, are they selling because they have to? Or are they selling because they want to? Or are they in a position where they're in a rush or in a hurry? Are they motivated? Why are they motivated? Do they have an outstanding loan that is putting pressure on them to just cash out? It's important to understand what the motivation of the sale is, because then you can understand if this is going to be a hard sell or an easy sell. Ask the agent if there's a recent survey that was done. Sometimes boats will go under contract, they'll have a survey done, and then the buyer will back out for whatever reason, price or things found on the survey. So if you ask the question, was a survey recently done, or are there any known issues that have been discovered since the listing process, the agent is obligated to tell you. And because they're obligated to tell you, it can actually help in the first round of negotiations that I'm going to briefly talk about next. And always get a survey performed. It will pay for itself. I can't believe the number of people I have talked to who say, oh, this is a newer boat, it doesn't need a survey, or oh, this boat is very, very clean, well kept. I don't need a survey. Surveys are expensive. But at the end of the day, the survey is always going to find something. It's their job to find something. And there's always going to be findings that are worth money, and that money will be taken off in the end. So at the end of all the transactions, it will pay for itself and then some. All right, so let's take some of these negotiation techniques and let's apply them to boat transactions that myself and Laurelyn have actually done. And so you can kind of see a little bit about how these things apply in real situations. So our first boat, Silverton 410, had a starting price about $125, which is not too bad. It was already kind of a lower price than what many Silvertons were listed at that moment. But, you know, we knew that this guy who owned the boat was a single guy. He was living on the boat as part of his job that he had in the area. And we found out that he actually got transferred to a new job all the way across the country. So we knew that he was motivated. We knew that he wanted to unload the boat quickly. He needed to find a new place to live on the other side of the country, on the East Coast. He needed to sell the boat. He needed cash from the boat. So we kind of knew that he would be fairly open to price reductions. So we started with our first offer. We offered $115, $10K off, and he quickly accepted. And from there, we decided we're going to do the full Monty. We're going to do the full mechanical surveys, and we're going to do the hull surveys as well. And the surveys found about, I think it was about $20,000 in adjustments. It needed some work on the cooling systems. It needed some work in the interior. It was a very dirty boat. And we found out right before we were about to make our next offer that the agent said he recommended that the seller spend a couple $100s to clean the boat, and the seller declined. The agent was like, it's going to allow you to sell it at a higher price. And the guy was like, nope, I'm not spending any more money on this boat. I just need to cash out. So that story right there tells us that we could definitely close the sale with the concessions. And we offered $20,000 less, and he accepted. And we also knew that it had a dinghy that he was not going to be able to sell separately because, you know, he's not going to come all the way back across the country just to sell a dinghy. So he threw the dinghy in for free. And then once we purchased the boat, we sold the dinghy and used that money to further lower the price. So the final price, about $90,000 after round of negotiations, surveys, and additional equipment. So you can see from that example, just kind of understanding what you're dealing with gives you a lot of leverage to move the price. The next boat we had was a Carver 570, and the starting price was $400,000. So we started this negotiation finding out about the seller, and we found out that the owners of the boat was an elderly couple, and they were retired. They were very retired, and they had only used the boat as kind of like a social party pad that was just floating in the marina. So they didn't really use the boat for much else. So unfortunately, the husband passed away, and we found out from the selling agent that the wife wanted nothing to do with this boat. It was really the husband's boat. He was the one who cared for it. She wanted nothing to do with it now that he had passed. and it was an estate sale. So the son was involved as well, and the son wanted nothing to do with the boat either. He just wanted to cash out and go home. So we knew at the very beginning that we could lowball them and they would probably take it because they were more interested in the cash and less interested in the boat itself. So we gave initial price of $50,000 off, and they accepted. And we went into the survey process. The survey process found about $25,000 in adjustments. We went over the survey with the selling agent, who explained it to the son and the wife, and they agreed to a final price of $325,000. And it was a fantastic deal. The boat was very, very well kept. It was very upgraded. It had a lot of bells and whistles, but it's an estate sale, and they don't know and they don't care. So you're not really dealing with the real owner. You're dealing with a proxy, and the proxy is really not interested and not attached to the boat as like an actual owner might be. So you can see from that angle how we approach the Carver sale. And then our third boat, you'll find out about in episode 14. But it did have a starting price of $290,000, and we found out a little bit about the buyers, and they were a family of 4, middle-aged, school-aged children, and they did the loop recently in the last year. And we found out from the seller, from the selling agent, that they did the loop. They want to sell the boat. They have a note they have to pay off. And if you look at it, if you step back and take a look at it, they're not avid boaters. They wanted to, and that's okay. They just wanted to check the box, and they wanted to get the loop done. They wanted to experience the loop, but they don't want to own a boat. They're not boaters long term. So that's motivation number 1, to get rid of the boat. The second motivation is that they still have a boat loan and they're done with the loop. So nothing motivates you more than having bills to pay for something you're not going to use anymore. So with that kind of knowledge in mind, we gave the initial offer $30,000 down, and they accepted. So we went down to $260,000 going into the survey. And when we actually offered $250,000, they refused to go that low. They wanted to go up to $260,000, and we initially took that as the owner must know that something's coming in the survey. If he didn't want to agree to a price that he had told the agent he would probably go down to, it's probably something where he expects there to be something coming up in the survey. And so, surprise, there was $20,000 in work that came up in the survey, primarily with the generator, primarily with some of the, I think it needed new shaft seals, and it needed some engine work on the back. So, not a huge concession, not a huge bunch of work, but it is work that is going to cost the next owner money. So we offered $20,000 less after the survey, and they accepted for a final price of $240,000. And again, starting to see a pattern here. Figure out how far you can go down with the first offer. Make that first offer based on understanding the sale and the seller and the situation, and then do the surveys. And the surveys give you kind of like a final lap that you run with discounts and price adjustments. So there you go. There's kind of like the 3 main examples. So I hoped you learned something from the three examples and from our combined experience of the last couple of boat transactions. It certainly pays to do your homework. It will pay you and then some. It certainly pays to get outside expertise to give you additional information. That will pay for itself as well. And at the end of the day, we were kind of lucky to have 3 sales and 3 motivated sellers. It made it a lot easier. We could have just as easily gotten conservative hardball sellers. And you might be asking, well, who are those types of sellers that will not work with you on price? Typically, they're going to be sellers that are really attached to their boat. They've owned it for a long time, and they kind of feel like they're only going to accept top dollar to release their boat to somebody else. Another example of a conservative seller that may drive a hard bargain would be somebody who has a loan that is more than the value of the boat, and they just will not accept that they are going to have to take a loss on this transaction, et cetera, et cetera. There are other examples. You just got to kind of ask questions and kind of figure out who you're dealing with before you enter into negotiations. And at the end of the day, if you don't like the price, don't continue. There is a final step at the end of the process, and the final step is called boat acceptance. And once you sign, I accept this boat in its current condition with this current price. Once you sign that, no deposit is coming back to you if you back out. But the helpful thing is that step is way at the end. And you will not actually get to that step unless you get to a final price. So keep that in mind. If you have any other ideas or techniques that you think are also useful in the negotiation of a new boat, please put them in the comments. We appreciate any kind of feedback you have on negotiations. And until next episode, which we will reveal our final boat that we chose. Safe boating, everyone. Good night.